Hello there, Bic Benedict here. We're playing Gears of War 4 on the PC. This is my solo guide and walkthrough, and we're currently on Act 3-2. It is entitled Night Terrors. So this is an interesting chapter, and it's a departure from what we've done up until now, fighting the robotic class of enemies. So now we're going to say goodbye to fighting them, and we're going to say hello to fighting a different enemy. Now, there are robots later in the game, but for now we're going to be fighting more traditional Gears of War enemies, starting with the Juvy, which is what this is. It is a smallish creature that charges at you like a wretch did. If you remember the wretches, there were these little hunchback enemies that would run and jump at you and kind of put you off guard by putting you out of cover. But this is in the same vein as a wretch from the other Gears of War, but this is a more difficult enemy because this enemy it has the ability to I don't want to say the word strafe because I don't think it actually strafes, but it actually it jumps from side to side. It jumps off walls, and they can be difficult to target. So it is probably one of the more difficult. I personally think it's one of the hardest enemies in the game to deal with. I mean, it obviously, you can put it down very quickly, and it's not a huge threat. It's not like a Scion. We'll face heavies later in the game that are actually grub-like, but they're just really hard to track, I think, is the bottom line. So that is the bottom class. There's also a screamer. Now, you from what I've read online, you don't actually fight the screamers, although I think you can shoot at them, but the screamers burst nearby pods, causing an eruption of juvies, and all of those guys can come at you at the same time. Now, there's a part up here that's like right in this next area where you can actually have like 6 of these guys coming up at you, and I'm gonna show you how you can prevent that from happening, because it's very difficult to live when you've got so many of them all of a sudden just bursting out of every pod nearby. And I believe the way to do it is to just not first of all, don't break any pods, and don't shoot anybody. Just try to melee kill them. So what's a good weapon to deal with these guys? There are certain weapons that do one-hit instant melee kills with these guys. See this right here? Be really careful, because if you burst some of these pods in here, I believe some of them contain the screamers. They'll come out and they will cause all of the pods in that room to burst. Now, you can backtrack and funnel them down this walkway over here and maybe not die, but I had the most success over here by just chainsawing them and not shooting any of these pods over here at first. I mean, we can finish them off now, but something about when they all spawn, shooting, causing any bullets to fly in this area when they're around causes the screamers to come out in some capacity. I don't really know what it is. I've read on the Wikia that you don't actually fight the screamers, but you can target them and they do get killed, so I could have been wrong about that. Just be careful when you open that door. It's a good idea to burst the pod right in front of the door so that you can do a 180 pivot and then get out of the way and kill the juvies in there. So that's a juvie. Now, there's a hierarchy of these enemies. Now, we're going to be fighting the next tier up pretty soon. They're called Amagos, and it's a tough fight because it's a close quarters fight, and there's a lot of suppressive fire put on you. Now, over here, there's a point of interest, and I think it's one of the heavier weapons. The weapon that I just shot out of the ceiling over there in that little glue pod, that's a Retrolancer. So I purposely saved that cargo container so that I could fill up on a little bit of Retrolancer. It gave me less than 50, but I'll take 50. Doesn't matter to me. It's better than not having any for it. So there's the point of interest. I'm not sure what's up there, but whatever it is, it's not something that I use. It's just, I think it's a heavy weapon, honestly. One of those weapons that, it restricts your movement. Okay, so now watch this. See, there's going to be a screamer up on this roof up here, if I'm not mistaken. And no, see, they all come flying at you. And I need to apologize for any misinformation I gave about the Retrolancer not being able to do anything more than poke. I can't remember how the Retrolancer worked in Gears of War 3 because it's been 6 years since I played Gears of War 3, guys. The Retrolancer was something that premiered in that game. I'm sure it was in Judgment too, but I haven't played those games for a long time, and I don't remember how the Retrolancer operated. But what I do now know is that you can do the stick and lift with this weapon, provided that you've got enough of a charge, so that when you're holding the B button down, your gauge goes into white, into red, meaning I guess that you've built up enough steam, as it were. And if you don't get the red bar to turn, or excuse me, the bar to turn red, then he just pokes, and it can be an instant kill, but there's such a thing as stamina with many of these weapons too. So you can't just poke constantly. It just doesn't work. He has to recover from his animations. So, like I said, there's the Juvy class and the Screamer class. They're basically the same thing, except the Screamers cause things to burst from pods. And then we've got the Imago class. Now, this isn't that much of a prolific enemy. Why does my screen's auto brightness do this? I can't believe this fucking thing. I looked up the word Imago. It's a long fight, isn't it? Look at all these guys. And I didn't even know that these grub-like enemies were called Imagos, but apparently an Imago is an adult in its final adult, sexually mature, typically winged state. Second definition is that it's an idealized mental image of another person or of the self. But things like that, honestly, it doesn't. A lot of people are different. A lot of people are interested in different things. I'm mostly interested in the mechanics and helping people. Like, if a person's struggling in a room trying to beat it, they could care less what an Imago means. But I like to give out definitions because I was curious why they're called that. And these are the Imagos in here. Most of them have hammer bursts, I believe. One of these guys, I think, has a Lancer. But this fight is difficult because it's close quarters. You've got a lot of these guys using suppressive fire on you. You can't aim very well. And you're gonna have probably a tough time in this room because of just your proximity to them. There's just no, there's not enough space. So you're getting shot by multiple enemies, and you're gonna get put down fast. And it's actually misrepresentative of how difficult this enemy is, because you're normally not fighting an enemy this close with so many of him at the same time. With three of them shooting at you very close to you, you're not going to stand much of a chance to aim. So you've got to use the third person cover trick, use a little bit of flanking techniques, and choose, if you want, you can use frag grenades. Now, so what the backstory is about these Juvies is that once they spend enough time in a cocoon, they turn into what we're seeing now, these guys here. And then there's a higher echelon of these guys that are called drones. They're all part of the Swarm class. How they start out to be a Juvie in the first place, I'm not sure. I think it's just a dead body or some kind of a host body put into a cocoon at first, but it's interesting, and it's refreshing to not have to fight the robots, because frankly they were quite boring to me. Okay, so now you got a checkpoint, and now you've got drones. Both of these drones have hammer bursts, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to swap to my hammer burst, after I pick it up, and I'm going to use this piece of cover here to aim over my left shoulder and preserve my aim over my left shoulder. And then there's going to be 2 drones out here. Now there are dripping little cocoons on the ceiling that, if you want to shoot them, can provide you some temporary but destructive cover. I don't use it, quite honestly. It's more beneficial, in my opinion, just to use this third-person cover trick. Now, one of these drones, I think he's got a hammer burst. One of them, I think he's got a lancer. But you've got a checkpoint to rest. You got a checkpoint to rest on. That's why I'm doing some bold techniques at first, but you are gonna have to do quite a lot if you want to get the next checkpoint. So when you push forward across the way, you're gonna see some Juvies, I like this. I like I said, I don't like fighting the robots. I didn't find them personally very enjoyable to fight, but I like how they swapped it up and how there was a change. It started out that you were fighting locusts of yore, and then you fight the DBs, and then you switch to fighting these guys, and then later in the game, as it's winding down, you resume killing the robots. Now look at this. See? These guys are very aggressive, and this is the type of thing that they will do. So you need to be very careful about anytime you see a guy charge at you like that, you want to make sure you're just standing still and revving up that chainsaw. If they're carrying lancers, you're going to start a war. And I believe I mentioned, did I tell you guys how to win wars? You definitely will lose a chainsaw war by not starting to press the B button quickly enough. And I also believe that it has to do with the rapidity with which you press the B button, but I don't know if that's sacrosanct. I think it just has to do with your initial response time to pressing the B button. So you don't have to tap it like a madman, although I thought formerly that you did have to do that. But I like the whole counterattack where enemies are vaulting over cover and there's a very small window of time for you to press the B button to counter and then backhand them to push them off of you. So too is it true that your response time has to be very quick if you want to win the chainsaw war. So now we're going to do an interesting fight over here. The first time I did this fight on my insane run, I did it in a completely different way. This time what I'm going to do, and now you're also going to be introduced to the sniper class of the Swarm. These are guys with slanted oblong faces, and they use the long shot. So when you first come up there, quickly throw a grenade to seal up the. I'm going to be calling these hotbeds for the most part. Here's a boom shot, and there's going to be a point of interest. Why is there a lantern right there? Just, you don't need to, the shovel and everything in the way. Now let me just warn you guys, if you think you might be having trouble with the boss-like enemy, see there's a pail there. I wish they would just not put those things in the way. It's irksome. Now I think the boom shot gives you 4 every time. But if you think you might be having a hard time with the pouncers that are going to be coming up afterwards, you might want to save the boom shot. The boom shot doesn't have much to speak for it since it seems to get neutered in every version of Gears. It is a power weapon technically, and it can kill enemies faster than the Lancer. So I personally just used it over here to seal grub holes. The guy with the long shot that we took out earlier, when I went to go pick up his long shot, it only had 1 round in it, unfortunately, so I didn't keep it. I've actually started to really enjoy the long shot, but if it only has 1 round, I don't want to keep it. But the reason I didn't get the boom shot is because I wanted to make sure that people that might have a problem beating this next part don't see me using a power weapon and not be able to get help because maybe they didn't get there with a power weapon. So I just wanted to show you that having a power weapon can be helpful, but you don't need it for the pouncers. even though it could potentially be helpful. So, so starting in this act, we're looking for JD's dad. Marcus got stolen by a snatcher, and throughout this whole act, we're going to be looking for the snatcher, what snatched up Marcus. Now, the first enemy here is the pouncer, quantity of 1, and the quills that this thing fires at you. They don't instantly kill you unless you're directly in front of them and you have no cover in between you and them. Like if you're close up too, it usually gives you a break. It doesn't even outright kill you on inconceivable difficulty. But you're gonna have probably no issues killing the thing when it's by itself. But when there's another one, it can start to be very difficult to deal with this section. Now, this thing can jump on you, and there's a B button mashing fest. I've never been able to not get killed by it personally, so I don't know what the reason for that is. So if you're getting jumped on, you might be out of luck, because it seems to not be very working very well on Inconceivable. But if they jump on your teammate and bite them enough, they can get killed and you'll go into a fail state. So anytime one of these guys jumps onto your teammate, you have to fire at the pouncer. And it doesn't have to be at their weak spot necessarily. It could be anywhere. Just fire at them to knock them off of your teammate, like right here. And once you approach them, then you can, if you're at the right spot, you can chainsaw them. But the car was in the way right there, and I needed to be a little bit more over to the left. Because if you're not at the right spot and right in front of their little glowing orange belly, you won't chainsaw them. Your blade will just bounce off their armor. So that's, I guess you would call the boss of the level. And if they jump on cars next to you, you're going to get staggered. And it's for me never been a death sentence. So if you get staggered, just recover, roll on, move to a different piece of cover. And the pouncer is something that we're going to encounter quite a lot. And the whole damage system for the pouncer, it seems to be pretty similar to what it was on insane difficulty, quite honestly. I'm not trying to say that it's not given any alteration about the damage, but I think if you could say that insane, it had 100 hit points, maybe it has 95 now on Inconceivable, somewhere around 90 to 95. It's not the same probably, but it's not drastically different, and that's what most of this difficulty is basically. But anyway, I hope you guys were helped by this chapter. I'm going to see you in 3-3, and like I said, I just hope you didn't have any problems with this chapter. And I will see you over there directly. Take care.